Good afternoon once more, honorable members of the jury. I am Bika Rodrigue Jr. from Cameroon, and my team we have Chimemwe from Zambia, Akimbola from Nigeria, Chidima from Nigeria, and Eric from Ghana. Our project is JACCA Agro-Warehouse Integrated Solutions. This is the outline for our presentation. Welcome to the Northwest region of Cameroon. In the Northwest region of Cameroon, agriculture is the most vibrant sector, with crop farming being the order of the day. Almost every rural household owns a farmland from which they basically earn a living. Among other crops, maize is the most cultivated by farmers in this region. It takes a period of about 5 months to cultivate maize, ranging from the period of March with the coming of the rains to the period of August, after which the maize is harvested and stored. When these farmers have their maize stored, they use it both for household consumption and for sales. When the farmers sell their maize, they use their income to purchase other household needs. This is the routine for all other crops these farmers cultivate, and this is basically the lifestyle of these rural farmers. The World Bank states that agriculture, compared to other sectors, is 2 to 4 times more effective in alleviating poverty amongst the poorest. However, in Cameroon, despite 70% of the working population being engaged in agriculture, the poverty rate is still at 37.5%, and this is highly composed of by these rural farmers. So does this mean agriculture has not the potential to alleviate poverty? Of course, the answer is no. That means there is a problem. What is the problem? We looked at the Northwest region of Cameroon, where we concentrated and where agriculture is the most vibrant sector, and we noticed that most of the interventions, of course, which have been made to boost agricultural productivity have been limited to the pre-harvest levels. That's at the level of cultivation. And what do? They basically train these farmers on improved farming techniques. They share improved seeds for the farmers, distribution of fertilizers and pesticides. And of course, we can't argue the fact that these have actually improved the harvest of the farmers. But however, after harvest, there has been limited intervention, and this is where the farmers are facing huge challenges. What challenge then do we identify at that level? Post-harvest losses. Post-harvest losses is a huge issue in the agricultural sector today. In Cameroon, over 30% of food is lost annually after harvest. This is actually a global problem, as you can see the rates globally, even in Africa. And for maize alone, 40% is lost annually after harvest. That is close to half of what they have harvested being lost. What is causing this problem? We looked at the maize farmers in the Northwest region of Cameroon, and we noticed that they use a poor traditional storage mechanism for storing their maize harvest. And if you can see the image depicted at the right of the slide there, this is basically how the farmers store their maize after harvest. This image is basically their house, and there is a layer below their ceiling, and that is where they store their maize after harvest. Now, with this system of storage, their maize is exposed to attacks from pests and diseases, and this is what greatly contributes to the loss of their maize after harvest. Moreover, at the level of transportation and sales, poor handling results in spillage, and this also contributes to the huge rates. Of course, when these farmers lose such a great percentage of their harvest, they have little to consume. This results in food insecurity. In the Northwest region alone, food insecurity is at 42%. That's a very high rate. And when they also lose their products they have stored, they don't have much to sell. That results in low income, and of course, this is poverty. How do we come in to address this problem? How does JACCA solve this problem? My colleague Chimemwe is going to present to you our solution.
Thank you, Rodrigue. As elaborated by my colleague Rodrigue, post-harvest loss, coupled with lack of access to finance, is the greatest threat to farmer livelihood. Then, how does JACCA Agro-Warehousing step in? Firstly, through the reduction in post-harvest loss in the agriculture value food chain through the provision of warehouse storage facilities. The warehouse storage facilities will enable our farmers from the Northwest region to store their commodities with us in order to prevent loss. Furthermore, it's not only about storage, but about quality as well. we ensure good quality standards, firstly from the reception stage, that will enable us to see the commodities, that will help us in order to reject or accept the commodities. Furthermore, in the warehousing process, from the cleaning, drying, storage. Storage is one thing that we are very passionate about, and we will enable that we store them in customized storage bags. Now, the other important issue is lack of access to finance. How do we tackle this issue? As you can see, we have what we call a warehouse receipt system. What is a warehouse receipt system? Our project, JACCA, will partner with finance institutions in order to issue out a warehouse receipt. That will be a warehouse receipt that is of stored commodities that will be used as collateral by our farmers in order to gain access to finance. But access to finance is crucial because we will boost our productivity in maize, which will also enrich financial inclusion, which will increase our livelihood of our farmers. But these two are not the only solutions that we have to offer. My colleague, Akimbola, will elaborate further on our various other solutions. Akimbola.
Thank you very much, Imwewe. Our intervention also involves improving market access for the farmers. We have designed a JACCA mobile application as a tool to enable farmers have increased reach for the sales of their products. The JACCA mobile application is the meeting point for all stakeholders, such that the farmers will have the ability to penetrate local and international markets through e-marketing, such that the farmers can monitor the sales of their stored grains. We also work with transportation services to facilitate the movement of the stored grains from our storage warehouses to the market. There's also the opportunity for businesses to advertise their goods and services on the JACCA mobile application. Revenue from this is an additional stream of income to our organization. Furthermore, agro-information services are available on the JACCA mobile application. We're very positive that with the JACCA mobile application, rural farmers in the northwest region of Cameroon will have access to more secure markets as well as wider reach for the sales of their grains. Finally, our intervention involves capacity building. How do we intend to do this? We intend to work with existing non-governmental organizations in the northwest region of Cameroon to train farmers. Farmers will be trained on sustainable agricultural practices like climate-smart agriculture. They would also be trained on post-harvest handling as well as quality monitoring. This is because we know that the quality of our output can only be as good as the quality of grains we receive from these farmers. So we want to ensure that the farmers have the knowledge and the skill set to enable them have all year-round productivity in order to alleviate poverty among rural farmers in the northwest region of Cameroon. So the expected impact of our project will now be discussed by my colleague Chidima, the second C in JACCA.
Thank you, Akimbola. In order for us to measure our impact, we'll be making use of the Sustainable Development Goals as our benchmark in measuring the impact of our project, JACCA. Now, JACCA is here to help farmers in the northwest of Cameroon reduce their maize post-harvest loss by 50%. My colleague already mentioned that 40% of their maize, they are lost during the post-harvest level. So we are here to help them reduce these losses by 50%. How do we do this? Knowing that this year's Geneva Challenge project is bordered around poverty reduction, the first SDG that our project has direct impact on is SDG 1, which is no poverty. Our project is here to help farmers improve their income. How do we achieve this? Farmers would have access to our warehouse system. They'll be able to store more grains in higher quantity, and also for a longer period of time. This would help them, after we help them with the sales through our digital platform, we would help them improve their income by 10 to 30%. Also, our project would help farmers reduce food insecurity. 42% of the inhabitants of northwest of Cameroon are severely food insecure. And this is because they lose most of their products after harvest. With our solution, the reduction in post-harvest loss by 50% and also improved income, it would help them have alternatives in order to purchase other food items, which will help reduce food insecurity by 5%. Our project would also touch on the SDG 10. We know that one of the economic proxy for reducing inequality is purchasing power, and these farmers lack this. Our project will incorporate farmers' inclusiveness. This farmers' inclusiveness will not only help them improve their income, it would also help them increase their standard of living. This is through giving them improvement in their purchasing power. They will be able to purchase more, which would help improve their overall standard of living, thereby bridging the gap in inequality, and the expected target is 5%. Finally, our project is here to foster collaboration. Like Akimbola mentioned, we'll be working with different companies, transportation companies, international and national NGOs. We'll be working with agricultural and microfinance banks. All these are our expected partners, and also we'll be linking these farmers to rural, urban, and the international market to enable them make sales. This would help improve the overall maize value chain in northwest of Cameroon. Our project, this impact is not just, we are going global. When we scale up, we expect that the percentage of all our impact would improve as we scale out. Now, you'll be wondering what the cost of this project would be. Eric would put us through the finance estimate.
Thank you very much. So with such a great project, one would ask, how do we plan to sustain the project? This brings us to the finance aspect of the project. With the finance aspect, we made estimates for the first year and projections for subsequent years in the project in order to know our cost and revenue streams, as well as our break-even point in the project. The total cost of the project amounts to about $30,000 and this is cost that's made up of the fixed cost, which is the one-time cost we are going to incur in the first year of the project. And this is cost that consists of costs such as construction of the warehouse, shelving, and other installations that will be done in the warehouse. We also have the operational costs. The operational cost is the cost of running the business annually. And this amounts to about $8,854. And this is costs which includes costs such as administrative costs, our JACCA agro bags, utilities, among other costs that will be incurred as operational costs or cost of running the business. How do we plan to finance the project? We plan to finance the project through our joint efforts by pooling resources as a team, with money from the Geneva Award, and also through the application of other grants. On the other hand, we also looked at our yearly revenue, and our yearly revenue amounts to about $13,600. And this is revenue that comes from streams such as the selling of the produce or the products, storage of the products, and also advertisement on our digital platforms. With projections made for subsequent years, we came to the realization that our break-even point in this project will be the fourth year. If you ask us, we would say this project is one which is financially feasible. What are we saying? Yes, this is a great project, which is going to impact the lives of rural farmers in the northwest part of Cameroon. One key point is that, or one fact is that when we are looking at the issue of poverty, we need to analyze it holistically from a multidimensional perspective in order to ensure that the various parts that play a role in this issue is looked at, and also to know how best to solve the issue. In the northwest part of Cameroon, it borders around an extensive part of their maize value chain, more particularly post-harvest, and this is where we come in with our solution to help curb the issue. With our expected impacts, we are very confident that the livelihood of these farmers would be changed for the better. And also, looking at the various aspects too, the farmers are going to build that strong relationship and partnership with these stakeholders, and also make some good income to help improve their livelihood situation. One key message that the JACCA team
has for everyone here is that with JACCA, the farmers have an assured route out of poverty. We are the JACCA team. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. It's very interesting, and I liked very much how you were outlining the impact you're going to have. And I heard you saying that the center of the project is around the app. This is where all the stakeholders meet. And there I have a question about internet access in rural areas in the north of Cameroon and the ability of your beneficiaries to really participate in such an app. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So at the initial stage, we have designed conceptually that this application will be feasible on even non-Android phones in such a way that the farmers can get text messages, SMS. It's not absolute that in the northwest of Cameroon there is no internet access. There actually is. It might not be the best, but with development, technology is gradually getting into the grassroots, yes.
Thank you very much. Very excellent presentation. I was just wondering, how many people are we talking about that are going to be covered by this project in the first phase up in the northwestern Cameroon?
Thank you very much for the question. Actually, we intend to start with about 100 farmers for the first stage. When we work with them and we see how far we're going, then we see how we're going to scale up. We're targeting 100 farmers first.
And my second question that follows from that is, as you see how it works and as you refine the process, etc., at what stage would you think that you'll be able to scale up both within Cameroon and outside of Cameroon?
Well, if we start up the project in the northwest region of Cameroon and eventually we break even, like you saw in the 4th year, I think that's the point where we are going to start scaling up, because we are planning to get both rural, urban, and international markets. Mm-hmm. So at the point where we break even, we know we are on a good foot. And from that point, we start scaling out.
Thanks also from my side for this proposal. I was just looking back at your document, and you mentioned a competitor called Certi-Spec Services. I wanted to ask another question on that, because I understand this competitor is doing similar service in a way, but providing them mostly in port towns and not really targeting small-scale farmers, if I'm correct. So my question is, if this competitor is already there with warehouses, etc., just not exactly in the region, wouldn't it be easier for them to scale up their operations to target that market that you are targeting at? And if that's the case, what is your competitive advantage to this existing player that has already infrastructure, services, etc., in the country?
Our competitive advantage is who we are targeting. Yes, we mentioned the company, which is a multinational company, but they mostly target commercial farmers. And commercial farmers are already well off. Our target is small-scale rural farmers who make the majority of farmers in the rural area. So that is our competitive advantage. Mostly interventions or in terms of enterprises or commercial business is done with commercial farmers, because commercial farmers are seen as a better customer base. So our competitive advantage is the untapped market of rural farmers. That are a lot, and if we can gather up all that customer base, we'll be able to have a very good competitive advantage. Thank you.
Yes, first of all, thank you very much for this presentation. Coming from Sierra Leone myself, I know exactly what you're talking about when you talk about crop wastage. And, but I have questions. You talk about, I think somewhere in your proposal, there was some mention of cooperative. I don't know what is there going, how are these farmers going to relate to each other, the stakeholders, the different farmers? Are they going to, do they have to work through a cooperative? Or what is this cooperation between the farmers that you foresee in your project? Then also, I think there was some mention too of the use of middlemen. these middlemen, how are they going to relate to your project?
Okay. Let me start with the aspect of the middlemen. Actually, we identified middlemen in our write-up as a challenge for the farmers because what happens is these middlemen actually exploit the rural farmers. So we are coming to wipe that out because the better is for the farmers. So we are coming in to help these farmers store the maize. And then we are going to sell the maize for the farmers using our application. And then we give the money to the farmers. And then, please, can you repeat the first question for me?
Well, hang on. Just a question. But how are these middlemen going to react? I mean, all of a sudden they're out of business. They're going to want to find either something else or trying to stop it.
Well, basically, they are middlemen, and they are not going to lose their market completely. We are not going to take over the whole area.
You should.
Well, if we scale up, then there's a possibility that these middlemen can come in and work with us in one way or another. We are going to operate in a large warehouse, and we are going to need some labor force. So in one way or another, we are going to be creating jobs. If they are losing their jobs from the other end, we are going to provide jobs for them because there is a lot going to be going on in our company.
Also, in addition, we found out that most of these middlemen, they are unstructured. By unstructured, we mean they are not registered. But starting out our business, we are going through the right process. We would meet the government, the local government in charge of Northwest region. We'll register our project, so we'd be recognized by the government, which would give us an edge over them. Because when farmers are getting more from, because these middlemen are just here, like he mentioned, to take more from the farmer and make gain. But we are here with a transparent receipt system, which would help these farmers not only to sell, but also to make income, while we also make our own business income. So I think they would prefer something that is more transparent for them. With the backing of the government, we have an edge over these middlemen. We are not competing with them in that negative regard. We are just giving these farmers a better livelihood.
No, the second question on the relationship between the farmers. I mean, do you envisage, I think somewhere, and I don't know, excuse me if I'm wrong, some kind of the relationship between the farmers themselves. Is there going to be, you said there's going to be in terms of SDG 17, more cooperation, more interaction with the farmers. So how do you envisage the farmers relating to each other?
Well, if I can take her place in answering that, when we talk about Sustainable Goal 17, cooperation amongst the stakeholders and not really among the farmers themselves, because we are going to have our farmers registered with us, and then we are going to negotiate a partnership deal with microfinance institutions where these farmers can use warehouse receipts to obtain microloans from these microfinance institutions. So there is that cooperation between the various stakeholders and not necessarily among the farmers themselves. But we are going to also be providing something like capacity building, and of course we'll be having these farmers together, and that can even bring some kind of cooperation between them. It all works out. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I have also a follow-up question. If I read correctly in the proposal is taking place in an area where there are some tensions and conflict. And I was wondering, how do you, on the one hand, make sure that that conflict doesn't affect your ability to implement the project, but also, on the other hand, that your project could eventually contribute to reduce the tensions in the area?
Thank you very much for that question. Actually, we cannot escape the fact that there is a serious crisis, political crisis in that part of the country. But if you look at our project, we coming in, the crisis is going on actually. We cannot deny that fact. I obtained my degree, my bachelor's degree in economics 2020. During that period, there were gunshots. We are studying in class, there are gunshots, but we found our way out. So our business would not really be something new because this crisis is 6 years now, and people are finding a way out. People are finding ways to survive. The cause of the crisis is even changing because those who are fighting for their so-called freedom now, the cause has changed. They are basically trying to earn a living because with the weapons they have now, which they are using to fight the government, they are rather terrorizing citizens of their neighborhoods and kidnapping them and demanding ransoms. And they are doing this because they know that if they drop their weapons, they don't have an option to survive. But looking at our project, I remember there was a time when there was a market for tomatoes in Nigeria. So a lot of farmers in this region got into tomato cultivation, and they were selling their tomatoes in Nigeria. This employed a lot of youths and households. People built new houses and bought cars from the sales of these. If you look at our project, if we come in with maize cultivation, which almost every household is involved in maize cultivation, and our project succeeds, then there is going to be a huge market, and a lot of people are going to be profiting from this. With these people who are actually fighting, when they see that there is an option, there is a way out. If we drop our weapons, there is a way out. Then I think we can contribute in reducing the level of the crisis, because they know that there is a way out. They have a source of income they can get into. Like I said at the introduction, almost every household owns a farmland. So they have the primary resource, they have the primary capital to start their cultivation. And by then, we are going to reduce a number of people who are actually fighting to come into something productive where they can gain some income. Thank you.
From your mouth to God's ears.
Amen.
Just to say that when we had the rebel war in Sierra Leone, that many people would, many of the fighters, they joined the fighting for a sack of rice. They would join the rebel group.
Thank you very much.
More than 700 welfare schemes exist to serve hundreds of millions of impoverished people in India. Clearly, the government is making efforts, but the benefits of these schemes are not reaching them, as the enrollment rates in these schemes have remained low over the years. And at the same time, poverty rates have risen. Our project aims to fill this gap and connect the economically disadvantaged with the benefits of these welfare schemes that can transform their life. This is the title of a recent news article which echoes the transformative power of welfare schemes, an elixir for poor, needy, and underprivileged. During our field interviews, a farmer shared that his enthusiasm at the prospect of receiving the benefits of a welfare scheme was eroded by repeated failures to secure enrollment despite having the below poverty line card, and after making 3 visits to the government office, each of which included a bumpy bus ride, he added, from his village to the town, he had foregone 3 days' worth of work, and he had failed to receive the benefits of these schemes. Despite these schemes that they already existed, for which the financial outlays by the government had already been made, and to which he was entitled. Through our project, we attempt to improve access to welfare schemes for the impoverished, ameliorate these injustices, and help them in upward social mobility. But before going into the operational details of the project, let's hear more about the problems plaguing the welfare scheme delivery mechanism from Saurabh.
India has more than 700 active social welfare schemes with 176 million poor people. It is 1/4 of the world's poor population. Thus, we choose India as the target country of our project. However, as Amit just mentioned, none of the social welfare schemes have reached to the 100% of the intended beneficiaries. Indeed, the exclusion rate for many welfare schemes in India is as high as 73%. Jharkhand is the second most poorest state in India, and it's home to 14 million poor people. From this state, we choose 2 districts, Ranchi and Chaibasa. Ranchi is predominantly urban, and the other is predominantly rural. Choosing these districts would allow us to consolidate on our scalability and learn from the varying experiences of the 2 different settings. As per the latest government survey, these 2 districts combined have 331,000 poor households who will be the potential beneficiaries of our project. Let's take an example of the most advertised social welfare scheme of India, PM Kisan, and let's examine the disconnect between the scheme and the intended beneficiaries. PM Kisan. It provides income support through an annual cash transfer of $75 per family to all land-holding farmer families. This is equivalent to $260 after adjusting for purchasing power parity. This equates to 1 year education expense for 2 children in India. This scheme is also one of the 5 chosen for our pilot project. In our chosen pilot districts, 82,134 households have still not received the intended benefit from this scheme. Although the scheme is operating for 3 years with a budget allocation of $26 billion US. Yes, you're hearing it right, $26 billion US. For almost all the social welfare schemes in India, the onus is on the beneficiaries to get themselves enrolled and access the welfare. This is a type of an ordeal mechanism where the citizens have to go through a cumbersome bureaucratic procedure to enroll themselves in the welfare schemes. The rationale for such mechanism is that it helps to reduce the inclusion error, but at the expense of increasing the exclusion error. This means many of the eligible poor who lack the capabilities, time, and money to get the information, prepare the documents, travel to the relevant government offices, are not able to enroll in these welfare schemes. From the last couple of years, government has made efforts to overcome these issues by digitalizing the enrollment system. However, it does not reduce the administrative burden. Since digital literacy in Jharkhand was seen as 1.5%, that is really low. Such experiences of dealing with the government system results in loss of self-efficacy and self-esteem amongst the poor, which further discourages them from applying to these social welfare schemes. Thus, empirically and as revealed by our field interviews, there is a gap between the poor people and the government welfare schemes.
Thank you, Saurabh. Based on our review of literature, consultation with experts, and learning from the lived experiences of the community members, we have developed a model to fill this gap. We believe that poverty is not the result of individual action, but collective inaction, which is why our model focuses on 2 interconnected parts: organized efforts of the community members with students as change agents, and partnerships with government and non-government actors, where Project Connect will act as a collaboration hub. Sohi and Agnes will elaborate on the details. Sohi.
So we propose a simple model whereby high school students bridge the gap between the welfare schemes, government welfare schemes, and their potential beneficiaries. Let me share the details. Students will visit neighborhoods during their summer break after undergoing 2 weeks of trainings under the guidance of a teacher. They will assess the eligibility of the households for the 5 targeted welfare schemes and assist in the enrollment procedure with the sensitization procedure. We plan to create a database on the enrollment status of the households from the assessment, and which will give insights to the governments and NGOs to understand the households who are in need. Students' visit and enrollment assistance will help increase the number of households informed and prepared for the enrollment as well. As an outcome, we expect increased awareness and enrollment rate for the welfare schemes. Beyond this, we aim for a larger impact: poverty reduction as a result of better access to welfare schemes, increasing government accountability, sensitizing students to our social issues like poverty, and building bonds among the youth and marginalized community members. Our goal is not merely connecting beneficiaries with the government, but connecting community members to be responsible citizens to each other. We plan to have inception period for 5 months to lay the groundwork for the project. Once it launches from the summer break next year, that is May to June 2023, at most 97,000 high school students from 276 schools can circulate their communities. Based on this number, each student needs to cover at least 9 households over the 2-month period, which will result in full coverage in the 2 districts. Then why students are the most suitable change makers for this problem? Indeed, there have been government efforts sending out social welfare officers to reach out to the beneficiaries in the community. However, our project has its own strength over current system in 5 aspects. First, students are already part of the community. Compared to government officers or digital solutions, they have much friendlier face-on when it comes to approaching the beneficiaries. Second, they're easy to mobilize considering the fact that they're in proportion to the community size. Third, high schools are in every region of the country, so easy to scale up the project. Fourth, a new cohort of students enter schools every year, which guarantees sustainability. Finally, it is educational for students to develop their potential as change makers in the society. So, how do students benefit from the project? To motivate students' participation, we'll grant a summer internship certificate and prize Connect Champion who visited the greatest number of the households. This can be a pathway for students to become social workers or find future job opportunities in the government sectors or our partner NGOs. Indeed, during our baseline interviews, we could observe intrinsic motivation in the students. We already have experienced the success of similar program in India as well. It was about leveraging student participation to compensate for gaps in the public system. In 2014, the Indian government launched the Clean Indian movement, in which students were sent to the households and sensitized community members on hygienic issues. Above all, the head of local government in our target district also recognized the feasibility of our project by giving us verbal consent to run the pilot project. Agnes will explain how this plan can be feasibly supported with our partnership model.
Thank you, Sohi. So as Sohi just said, partnership is vital in our model. Recent data shows that there are around 150,000 NGOs in India, and most of them are doing training, advocacy, and charity across the 5 welfare schemes that we're targeting. So when developing the model, our goal is not to reinvent the wheel, but to leverage the existing initiatives to achieve the common goal. We're sorry because this slide is not as what we're planning to, so we'll just carry on. Therefore, when looking for a partner, we came up with 3 selection criteria. First is local presence. We need a strong local presence in our targeted areas, the capacity to train students, and proven experience in delivering various welfare schemes. From these criteria, we have identified 2 potential partners that is already interested in our pilot. So let me tell you a bit about each of them. Our first partner focuses on creating young leaders who can be change makers. Their experience in assisting families in accessing various welfare schemes. And our second partner trains and empowers women field cadres to become last-mile support agents. Also, they are equipped with a digital platform to support the work. By joining our program, our model offers 3 key benefits for the stakeholders. The first, to increase social impact. Given the large number of poor people spread across the vast geography of India, our partners need more people on the ground to increase their outreach. So our summer internship model for the student is an excellent way for our partners to get change agents that they can engage with in the future. The second one is knowledge exchange. This collaboration will encourage active interaction between the government and the implementing partners, enable direct transfer of innovation, and improve understanding of the challenges and opportunities in delivering welfare schemes in that particular community. And finally, cost-sharing benefit. Our potential partners have been doing the program for over 3 years. which means that they have established the system and infrastructure ready to run the pilot. And from the government side, they will share non-monetary resources such as school facilities for the training. Combining the student training and partnership model, our project implementation is divided into 5 stages. After the deal making and groundwork are done, our partner will conduct the training for the students, and after that, they will be deployed to the community in pairs to conduct the socialization and assessment to the target beneficiaries. And the student will then submit the assessment form that we prepared to the school coordinator. And we will conduct the database analysis and feed it to our partners. And here, our partner will follow up with the potential beneficiaries, helping them to enroll and ensuring the welfare schemes are delivered as intended. As a collaboration hub, we will support the overall operation of this process and conduct monitoring and evaluation throughout the project cycle. Through this series of activities, we aim to develop a proof of concept to replicate this model in other areas. As mentioned earlier, our sustainability goal means that once the system we propose is adopted by both the government and the partners, we will no longer be required. So, a catalyst like us is needed to push this effort, but our role should not be permanent. Therefore, in the midterm, we seek improved collaboration between stakeholders where our support is gradually reduced. This will allow us to introduce our model in other areas. We will also conduct a stakeholders analysis to identify other well-resourced NGO to join our model and include more welfare schemes in our portfolio. Long term, our model can be mainstream as government policy. We expect this summer internship program will scale up in other states, and the government will adopt this innovation into their system. And moreover, we envision that our model will be used as a reference to solve a similar last mile problem where a lack of agency is evident. With an input of $60,000, we can make available the monetary benefit from the welfare scheme 200 times of that input for the poor households. And this model is low cost and practical, with clear incentive for the stakeholders. It is innovative and scalable. And finally, as a collaboration hub, Project Connect strategically bridged the engagement between government, stakeholders, and the community to enable access to welfare scheme as a first step out of poverty. Thank you so much.
Much better with the version they gave us.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
We understood anyway. Questions?
Yeah. Thanks so much for the presentation. I think this is a great proposal. I will tell you later more why I think that. But for now, to start with the questions, I think my main question is around the role of the NGOs, because I think your solution targets a big part of the cycle that you mentioned, identifying this household, getting this database done, etc. But then the last mile is still enrolling the eligible poor population that is not enrolled in these welfare schemes. And for that, I understand you still need the NGOs to support them. It's not the interns who will do that. So hence my question, do these two partner NGOs really have the capacity to enroll 800,000 something eligible households that you mentioned, or is this a bottleneck? And if it's a bottleneck, what's your solution? How do you plan to overcome this?
So the two NGOs that... So the two NGOs that we have potentially partnered with, in the sense that running our pilot, they will engage with us. Especially Indus Action has a geographic presence in most of the country, where they are already conducting advanced mediation. That is, of course, providing the information and awareness that the schemes exist and some households are aware, but then they, in a sense of the word, hold hands, in the sense that they tell what documents needs to be prepared, and then even help the households to prepare those documents. I mean, basic things like photocopying and other things, and then channel them through to the government offices. So they are actually filling the last mile problem, but our contribution to the system is that they have limited hands to carry this out. And our interns act as agents who are closer to the community in bringing out the ineligible sources, and that's why we are acting as a collaboration hub. So yes, the short answer is, of course, they are already doing this last mile problem.
Yeah, I just want to add on that. Take an example of Indus Action. They have the program that they call 3.5% of Changemaker. So they believe that if they can recruit at least just 3.5 of the population, they can change, they can make this welfare scheme deliver like the Changemaker like they're intended. So that's, the program is already running for like almost 3 years, and it keeps growing, and they really need more young people to join the program, because at the moment they're currently like expanding and they want to scale up in other states as well. So I think we believe that they are really solving the last mile problem. And the second partner, Hak Darshak, they already have from our interview with the Hak Darshak people, they've already delivered around 7,000 welfare schemes through their digital platform. So I think it's the two partners that we selected is quite, yeah, good.
If I can add short about the technical perspective regarding the management of the students, which is like 97,000 number of students, we'll have a nodal person, which is teacher at the school, and they will collaborate with the local government authority and the NGOs. So if this partnership works synchronously well, then we believe it will work out well as well.
If you manage to launch this, how confident are you that you're actually going to be able to convince 97,000 students to actually do this stuff? And what's your projection in terms of success rate?
I can take an example from the Clean India movement that Agnes gave an example of. There already exists an informal chain of directives that when a district magistrate says that this program needs to be launched in this area, utilizing the high school students as let's say interns, for instance, in the Clean India movement, then directives are passed on to the high schools, and the teachers are assigned this role of being the nodal person, and then they train the students, and then the students are deployed. But then we don't expect, because we would carry it out as a volunteering program, of course, and we are basing our confidence on the field interviews that we conducted, actually spoke to the high school students, and they did show intrinsic motivation. And when we had discussions around their incentives that they stand to gain from it, and given that they have already been involved in similar activities, we believe that we can achieve so.
And, sorry.
Yeah, I would just like to add that with the training and with the whole internship program, during the end, we'll also give them insights. We'll also conduct some award ceremony and a program where we give them insights about how they are going to do in future, what are the potential opportunities for them in the future. It could be kind of a workshop, kind of an activity, seminar for them to learn, because we are targeting high school students. After this, they are going to go into a new life, that is college, graduation, after that. So we're going to give them insights on how they can go ahead from here. Responsible citizens. Yeah, and be a responsible citizen for the society.
Yeah. No, thank you. I think this is a very interesting proposal, and it's a continuation a bit to Michael's, actually, because the other big group you're reaching is 276 schools, which need to be reopened or opened during the summer for at least 2 weeks. How do you plan to manage that and ensure that they adhere to the project?
These 276 schools that are there present in the 2 districts. Well, how it usually works is that even during the summer breaks, there are certain administrative functions. And if I may say, from a very personal perspective, my father was a high school principal and my mother is a teacher, so I know. These schools are open for certain administrative functions all throughout the year, all throughout the 12 months. So the teachers are there. And we have specifically chosen public schools because from the communities, no public school in India, apart from a very minute special cadre, offers boarding services. So they are already present in the community and they will be there. And again, 97,000 is the total number of schools. But what we aim to achieve is...
97,000 is students.
Yeah,
76 students.
Sorry, 97,000 students. Even if we achieve a 30% voluntary rate, which is a very... I would say a very humble number, modest number, then we hope that we can deliver the intended benefits as planned. Thank you.
Yeah. No, thank you very much for that presentation. I just have question. One question is relating, you never said anything about the parents. I mean, how do they welcome this program? The second thing, I think there was a question that went in terms of safeguarding the security of the students. And we know what happened, especially with female students, what could happen to female students. Well, it's not only female students, but mainly with female students. How would you guarantee that the students that are going to these households are safe?
Yeah. So firstly, I'd like to tackle that question from the cultural perspective of India. So given the cultural perspective, we have festivities all during the year, like Diwali and Holi and these kind of celebrations are there. And students are the one who take the initiative, go to the household to raise the funds and create and organize those activities for their community and bring the people out of their home and enjoy together in these festivities. So they are already, all during the year, they are already going to the communities. They already know the people. So for us, choosing the students, school students was this was also the reason, because they are already there. They are already familiar with the faces around in the community. They know their neighbors. They know their friends, their parents. So it's pretty much safe that way. But considering this, we have also taken this into account that while we are giving them training through the training brochures about the schemes, we'll also give them about looking for the signs of safety. Like, first look out for yourself. Like, stay away from if there is any suspicious signs. So we'll give that training as well, including with the training with the brochures. So this is our take. Any one of you want to add?
No. Yeah, you also send them out in pairs, huh? You don't allow them to
yes, yeah, we don't allow them. Yeah,
yes.
It's another element. Thank you.
So the parents are part of the community, so that works. Because I was saying, I mean, do you have any strong reactions from some parents who might not wish, who might not be interested to send their children on this scheme? The other thing you said, I had a question which I wanted to ask, because my granddaughter, who's in high school, is so engaged in her studies at this point. But I see that this is going to be a vacation done in the summer vacation. Yeah. I was just saying, would these students at high school that are fighting to compete and to have good grades, would they have the time to do this? But since it's a vacation,
yeah,
that should be okay.
So just to add on that, giving that academically, it is nowadays when we see application to colleges and stuff, usually I was also like this kind of a student who used to study a lot, be competitive, you have to get good numbers, especially in India that happens. But nowadays the norms are changing. Nowadays college wants that when you're applying to the college, you want that what extracurricular activities you have done. And I had nothing to say. And I was like, oh my God. So this project gives them that no, out of studies, we have done something additional that brings value to the society and this course. So,
I have another question about the role of government, because obviously there's the local authorities and those who administrate those welfare programs. And it sounded a bit like some of these programs were designed on purpose in a way that it's difficult to access them. So I'm wondering how interested is the government, or how would the local authorities take this initiative? Are they actually open to receiving thousands of people more coming in through the help of you and the NGOs? Or will there be some tensions, or how is the government perceiving this, and what's the role in this?
Yeah, so for this particular project, I spoke with the district collectors, who are the district magistrates, the administrative heads of the two districts, Ranchi and Chaibasa. And when I told them this project, they said that we are already conducting some of the PR activities related to these schemes, and all this happens. But the directives that they have to follow are mostly limited to elections. Like, they will propagate and they will promote these schemes unless and until there are elections or some or the other political activity going on. After that, there is no directive coming towards them, and they don't have any incentive to promote these schemes or to look for that the gaps are being met or not. So when we spoke to them, they said, yes, we do promote, but we can't do it more efficiently because we have orders coming from up and they are limited. So when we proposed this project that we want to do something like this, where people directly come to you to do this, they were very happy to engage with us. And they gave us the verbal consent for the two districts that you can go ahead and implement, and we will give you as much support as we can. And if there is any other thing that is need to be worked out, we will help you to do that.
And sorry,
yeah.
Because it flows in continuation with this. The recent trend in the administrative management of districts across India has been moving towards a performance-based system, where previously, let's say 5 years ago, they wouldn't be held accountable for their actions or performance in their districts. But more and more, what we also recognized, and the district magistrates admitted that, although implicitly, that if they do something innovative, something that can help the people, then they have some sort of a performance to show. So in a way, there is an incentive for them also to take up. And they also suggested that if you run your pilot and develop some sort of success, which is, of course, we are hoping to achieve, then you make a case to spread it and roll it out to more districts. Sorry, please go on.
No problem. I just wanted to give you the number regarding the government's role right now. So since they have a kind of performance they need to target, but they need to cover at least 1,000 from 1,000 to 1,500 community members to reach out, for example, for PMJDY. So if we have this project combined together with the government role, then it actually helps them to reach the goal of their reaching out point. So we believe it will work as a complement, not some burdensome work to them.
And just quickly added on that, when, like already mentioned before, this problem related to the huge gap between the government welfare schemes and the poor is been there for like years, and there is no solution at the moment that how to bridge this. So I think we believe that this kind of model that we propose is like a disruptive innovation when we take out the practice out of the government regular practices and legacy practices. We tried it and we develop a proof of concept. If it's proven, then they have something that they can see that, oh, this is something that is working. And of course, we know this is not just going to be happen in 1 or 2 years. It's probably 5, 10 years. But they need to see that this innovation is needed. And by seeing it, because it's more difficult to change, to break the legacy mindset and practices from the inside, if we put it like as an external and nurture it and then make it like an incubator program, something like that, that they can follow after that, yeah.
Just a follow-up question. And when you talk to these district officials, I think you mentioned, do you think there's interest in collaborating already from the start? Because I think it's important to, for example, involve them in designing the program, the trainee program, getting it validated by them, etc., to not run into problems afterwards, to get some of their engagement from the beginning. Do you think that's possible? What was their reaction to that?
Yeah. So this topic came up during the interview as well. So they said that there are two parts of this kind of activity. First is that you need to deal with the education system where the training would be provided, and you would need to give certain amount of training to the teachers who will provide the training to the students. So for that, we spoke with the district education officer, and they said if you keep certain amount of remuneration and if we provide you support through the channel of our education system, then yes, they will accept it and they will do the training and they'll support with that administrative part. And then from the administrative part of the district collector, they said that you would need the intricacies, or even though we have done our thorough research of the eligibility criteria and how the schemes are going to work, what benefits they avail, they said you need to get an intrinsic side of it. You need to see it from inside, how the scheme looks from inside when we are implementing. So they said once you're done, like once you're ready to implement, sit with us, see the, like when we say that we are going to, from December there will be a groundwork, we'll be working with them to understand how the schemes looks from inside, so that we better understand the scheme, so that when we go and train the teachers, or when with the help of DEOs we go and train the teachers and then they train students, they know implicitly how the scheme is looking like from that perspective, what are the eligibility criteria, how they can be fulfilled from behind the counter, like when someone is making them enroll, how does it feel on their side? So I think that support they have ensured. And yeah, if you guys...
I think that's about it, but from my understanding, I may add, we have secured verbal consent from 2 district magistrates, and that is the plan for the pilot project. But we are not stopping there. Even after we submitted the project, we kept on contacting more and more district magistrates. And so far, luckily, we have been getting positive responses. And these communications with them are, of course, aimed at securing their verbal consent, or in the future, official consent. But then, of course, these interviews do engage them in a way that they provide their inputs. Some of them are, the system is broken, so you can probably fix it like that, or these parts you might not get into. But then we mostly get a positive response. Thank you.
I have my last question. Give us kind of an indication of the time frame that you're looking at. Agnes mentioned something about 5-10 years, but in your calculations, when are you actually going to start seeing the impact, and when are you going to see enough impact so you can start scaling this up to other parts of India, and hopefully, wherever the system allows for something similar?
So the way this is designed is that it is supposed to be implemented in May and June, so that we don't hurt the educational opportunities of students. So our plan is to roll it out in the 2 districts, and the number mentioned by Sohi, over May and June. And given the success rates, even if we take a fraction of that, let's say if we were able to reach, and help me out here with the numbers, 10% of the households, just 10%, 331,000, right?
331,000 is the actual...
Yeah, so if we reach 33,000 households, then we can convert the monetary benefit that could be channelized to those eligible but yet unenrolled households of, and I'm sorry, I'm not good with maths, but 22,000 Indian rupees for each of those households, which is immense in terms of the health services they can access, the educational services they can access, direct benefit transfers that they can access, they have more dispensable incomes. So just in these 2 months, assuming that we reach only 10% of the households, we already can see a huge impact. And I guess the more and more we scale it up, and scaling up is not only in terms of more geographies, more districts, it is also in terms of engaging with more partner NGOs, because there are, as Agnes mentioned, there are so many NGOs which are working in this field already, and also expanding the basket of our welfare schemes that we have targeted. For our pilot, we have just included 5 high-impact welfare schemes. So we can scale it up in all directions: welfare schemes, geographies, and more partner NGOs.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. So let me start our presentation, ePASADA. Okay. Imagine trams being unavailable as the operators do transport strikes to demand for better pay. Imagine tuk-tuk drivers nowhere to be found as they are locked up in prison, fighting for the injustice and the threats to their livelihood. And imagine London's double-decker buses stuck in parking lots as their drivers beg for alms. This may not have happened in your country, but it did happen in ours, the Philippines. During the onset of COVID-19 pandemic, everything halted. Everyone was forced to stay at home. Most students and workers had to work remotely, and public transportation was then forced to stop its operations, leaving most drivers no choice but to beg along the streets to provide for their families. Jeepneys are known to be the most popular public transportation, uniquely made, and can only be found in the Philippines. Approximately 500,000 jeepney drivers across the country have either temporarily or permanently lost their jobs due to drastic changes in transportation modes, pandemic, and the ongoing global economic crisis. Mass transport was killed. This was a statement of Modi Floranda, president of a transport group, during the height of COVID-19 lockdown in our country. The government repeatedly turns a blind eye to alleviate the driver's cry for help, masking the real issues concerning the marginalized. Jeepney drivers were then arrested for their attempt to ask for financial assistance from the government. They were forced to beg on the curb just to provide and just to afford the essential commodities. Ronnie, a jeepney driver we interviewed, shared that he works from 4 in the morning until 9 in the evening for a take-home pay of 300 to 500 pesos. That's about 5 Swiss francs, or the average price of a local coffee here in the country, here in Geneva. Just imagine 15 minutes of your work compared to the 12-hour work of a jeepney driver in the Philippines. These are the main reasons why our team was motivated to create the open access, multi-point platform, the ePASADA. Our solution, ePASADA, is a mobile app to future-proof and retrofit the public transportation of the Philippines. We aim to first, improve the resiliency of the public transportation sector. Second, to reinvent the government's modernization program, not to replace the jeepneys, but to work with them as we innovate and protect the iconic Filipino transport mode. And lastly, to diversify opportunities and build the capacities of the jeepney drivers and their dependents to withstand the unprecedented challenges posed by the pandemic and the ongoing economic crisis. Lei is here to guide you through our proposed platform and solutions to assist the vulnerable and, more often than not, neglected public transport drivers of our society. Lei.
Thank you, Claude. Using the UN's 5 pillars of sustainable development as a guiding principle, we develop a redefined framework for this project that revolve around the social, environmental, and economic development factors while promoting peace and partnership components leading to bolder interventions. Socially, we aim to formalize the informal, prioritize the needs of the leadership and management capacity building, and ensure equal opportunities for everybody. The ePASADA app will feature innovations targeted to support the jeepney drivers while promoting a safe and sustainable way of mobility for the app users. The ePASADA Cooperative, next slide please. The ePASADA Cooperative allows drivers to access membership renewal, apply for credit facilities, check for traffic violations, and many more. This is an opportunity cost of productive time losses arising from long queues for government services. On the other hand, the ePASADA Incubation Laboratory allows drivers to access live training sessions, apply for certifications, and retrieve offline resources. Environmentally, we aim to propose to fine-tune the modernization program of the government and integrate proactive solutions while still adhering to the Sustainable Development Goals. In promoting sustainable technology, we encourage material upcycling of old jeepneys and educate drivers providing linkages to sustainable technology and transportation sectors, sustainable transportation providers. Economically, we aim to push for the institution of a comprehensive reform for public utility vehicle drivers. This will help drivers provide access to insurance, including accident and loss of income policies. In addition, it will also boost the transportation sector's economy by providing alternative income generation schemes. So the ePASADA Logistics, next slide please. The ePASADA Logistics allows customers to book a driver for deliveries or as a moving vehicle. On the other hand, the ePASADA Travel and Tours allows customers to book a tour, rent a jeepney as a service vehicle, or rent a driver. Lastly, a good foundation for a solution that will combat the industrial landscape is a strong and collaborative partnership. With ePASADA, we will open up opportunities for partnership opportunities with different stakeholders while still adhering to the Sustainable Development Goals as well. And ePASADA will provide operational efficiency and provide service quality for the transportation sector. With Project ePASADA, it is hoped that an effort will be made that will allow the concerned to understand the better and to create better policies for the transport sector. All these feature in one multi-point platform to help the vulnerable sector, the jeepney drivers, and its families. Now, Andrew is here to present the characteristics of the proposed site.
Thank you, Lei. In order to realize and test the interventions and the platforms mentioned by Lei, we have chosen the University of the Philippines Diliman campus in Quezon City, Philippines as our pilot site. As homegrown students of the university itself, we have witnessed how the campus acts like a microcosm of Philippine society, with both physical and socio-economic elements reflecting what happens on the bigger picture. During the pandemic, the campus drivers were gravely affected by the halting of academic activities. Operations of public transportation had to stop and resulted to loss in income for these drivers. The struggle of the typical campus jeepney driver is a story that every public utility vehicle driver has to tell. Of living on a day's wage, of trying to survive amidst the mountain of adversary, of finding themselves in the dark without a strong policy and program. Though what really convinced us to pursue the campus as our pilot site is the level of land use complexity and the existing transportation network within it. These features create an environment that allows us to establish a strong proof of concept. The university campus is a 493-hectare parcel of land that comprises a rich mix of land uses, with at least 27% of it comprising academic support facilities, 23% the science and technology hub, 22% residential and mixed uses, 8% resource generation, and the remaining being a mixed use of open spaces, protected forest areas, and the like. Within this richness is a robust mobility and transportation network that consists primarily of jeepney, soft mobility options, and private car routes, with the iconic jeepney being the top public transportation options. These conditions allows us to validate if our project works, to synthesize new information that could be captured upon the implementation process, and to refine it further for future application at larger and more complex scales. Iya will discuss this further.
Thank you for that, Andrew. Now, from our pilot site, we want to go bigger and wider with ePASADA. We want to scale up and replicate ePASADA to the city level and eventually as an overall national development strategy to address poverty. Because jeepneys are the most basic form of public transportation in the Philippines, both in urban and rural areas, the second phase of our project aims to replicate the program at the city level. We want to encourage local government units to replicate the project while responding to the specific needs of their constituents. It has to respond to specific problems in their locality. Once ePASADA is replicated at the city and intercity level, it can now be managed by a national government agency. This would help in the project's long-term sustainability since the project can receive continued funding from the national government's budget. We also envision ePASADA to create a ripple effect, to jumpstart the development of other multi-point open access platforms that other national government agencies can use for the delivery of their own programs. Once we develop a foolproof model for ePASADA, we want to replicate this project on a global scale. And who knows, you might soon see it being used in tuk-tuks in Thailand, remorques in Cambodia, and other public transportation in other countries. To institutionalize our project, we will submit our proposal to the Philippines Department of Transportation in order to request for funding and government support for the project. We would also reach out to Congress because an enabling law is essential in order to transform ePASADA into a national government program. Now, admirable as it may be that 4 graduate students are proposing ideas for national poverty reduction, the truth is we cannot do it alone. Collective action can only do so much if not coupled with government action, collaboration with private partners, and consultation with stakeholders. We want to highlight the importance of interdepartmental convergence in our project so that we are able to improve our service delivery and streamline efforts better for our ultimate goal of poverty eradication. The success of this project is highly dependent on the successful collaboration between and among different national government agencies and local government units. Ultimately, our goal is to reach more locations, reach more drivers, and reach every Filipino. During the pandemic, our jeepney drivers lost their livelihood. They had their freedom taken away from them. They had their dignity stripped off of them. Project ePASADA hopes to give them back their sense of dignity and responsibility in their livelihood. With ePASADA, we no longer have to imagine better conditions for our jeepney drivers. We no longer have to imagine our jeepney drivers. We no longer have to imagine our jeepney drivers with better pay and better opportunities. And we no longer have to imagine public transportation being our government's priority. Innovation, resilience, empowerment. This is ePASADA.
Thank you.
Much, very interesting. There's one question about the environmental impact of the jeepneys, and in a way, if we are in an SDG world, we need to be achieving several goals at the same time. So how do you plan to ensure that a new generation of jeepneys supported by you are also going to be contributing to pollution reduction?
Thank you so much for that question. We have Andrew here to share more on the environmental aspect.
That is actually a very interesting question, since jeepneys in the Philippines were actually adopted from existing or pre-existing shared taxis during the American colonial periods. The Filipinos were creative enough to adopt these shared taxis, reconfigure them so that they can be usable and will not be disposed after the Americans left. So we wanted to adapt, or we wanted to take a page from that story and introduce upcycling efforts, smart transportation features, and integration of renewable energy sources into the jeepney. So in order to make sure that they will be sustainable, they will be ecologically friendly, and they will not contribute to any unwanted ecological problems that are already pre-existing. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Actually, for that matter, through the app, we want to create linkages between the jeepneys and the companies, private sector, who are also active in the sustainable and smart features in terms of the public transportation sector. So what we want is not to really replace the jeepneys, but to work with them as we innovate and achieve the sustainability that we want in working towards the sustainable development goals.
To add to Claude's answer, we also wanted to connect the jeepney drivers to training resources so that they will be capable in integrating this newer technology into the jeepney transportation system, so that not only they will be supported on a larger scale, they will also be supported on the street level.
Yeah. No, just to stick to the environmental aspect of the jeepneys. First of all, I have a simple question, first of all. These were adapted vehicles from the Second World War. Are there new jeepneys being produced?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes, actually, yes.
Okay, that's the first question. Secondly, in terms of addressing, we all know that the transportation sector in developing countries, in my country, for instance, is the major polluter.
Yeah.
Because if you look at everything put together, we have all these vehicles that are polluting. So what I wanted to, and there's a move, in fact, to mass transportation, mass that is bigger than the jeepneys, to cut down on pollution. So in that respect, I mean, how do you see the jeepneys fitting into a program for the Philippines that will cut down on emissions? And in that regard, still related to it, I wanted to know, you mentioned the modernization project of the government. Could you tell us a bit more about what that modernization involves? Is it going to cut down on the emissions? Is it going, because we are concerned about the environmental effects of these jeepneys?
I can take this one. Actually, I can take this one. The current modernization program of the Philippine government actually aims to cut down on these emissions, actually. But one major issue that jeepney drivers are encountering is the realism behind this program, because most jeepney drivers right now cannot afford to immediately convert their jeepneys, their old jeepneys, into the much modern jeepneys that were required by the government, which has lower carbon emissions. So what we wanted to do is, like what we said before, to adapt what they've been doing since then, which is upcycling existing jeepney materials in order to reuse existing materials, existing systems, and then maybe enlarging the size of the jeepneys, training the jeepney drivers to modify what they have on hand, so that way the transition is much smoother, much less risky in terms of fiscally speaking on the end of the jeepney drivers.
And to add to that, the actual modernized jeepney is actually like a hybrid type of vehicle, which you can use still gas, or like even plug it into to make it an electric car. So just to make it simpler.
Yeah.
Which actually will reduce carbon emissions.
Two questions. What's the time frame for your project? How do you see it evolve? And when are we, if all goes as you wish, reach a point where you can start scaling it up?
Okay, so for the initial phase, we want to, of course, build the app, the mobile app, the platform that we want for ePASADA. And for the institutionalization of the mobile app, so we want to collaborate with the jeepney drivers, their organizations, the private sectors, the civil organizations, as well as the government, to have like a concrete plan and not an anti-poor plan to create to reinvent the modernization program and work with the jeepneys. And for the time frame, since our country usually have like 5 to 10 period plan to have like the strategies in terms of the priorities that we want in the government. So we want to work with the National Agency for the Transportation Sector to institutionalize the ePASADA and implement it in the Philippines. That would be the program, or the plan is usually 5 to 10 years time frame.
I have another question, and it's maybe bringing us back to the beginning. I thought I heard you saying at the beginning that there's a tendency to replace jeepneys with new modes of transportation. And then the question is, are we just trying with the ePASADA to fight a lost cause because they will be replaced anyway? Because the decision has been taken by the government, or is the government still amenable to maintain jeepneys in operation?
Okay, so they have programs for the jeepney drivers to assist them. However, there's a gap for this one because they have implemented this program without consultation, without working with the jeepney drivers. And what we want to achieve in this project is really to include them in the discussion, to include them in the innovation and building their resiliency. Because despite jeepneys having limited budget funds, we cannot just replace them. We cannot just eliminate them from the society because they're also part of the society. And that's the poverty that we want to address with ePASADA.
I want to ask a critical question about the complexity of the app. Looking at it, I think there are about 20 services offered, and personally I think this is way too much or unrealistic to start with, and with the risk of raising a lot of expectations and not being able to deliver on them. So I wanted to ask you if you have thought about this, and if you have identified the 1 or 2 services that are really most demanded by the jeepney drivers and with the highest potential. Also asking this because I think I didn't see in your proposal any detailed demand or analysis of the jeepneys. I didn't see where you did this analysis of what exactly they want. So this is kind of linked to this question. Do you know what's the most interesting services that the jeepney drivers want, and which ones would it be out of your list of 20?
So we are actually wanted to focus on the ePASADA Cooperative and the ePASADA Incubation Laboratory, which allows drivers to build their capacity and by giving them live training sessions about the app itself. I think those 2 programs will be our main focus. It will be in our very first. It will be our priority to create first, because ePASADA is for the drivers, not for. For the first phase, it is for the drivers, and for the second phase or the future phases, we will also be accommodating the app users. So in the ePASADA Cooperative and Incubation Laboratories, we aim to propose for an easier access for insurance, loss of income policies and accident insurance, which is, by the way, not present in our law for insurance policies in the Philippines. So that is one major component of the ePASADA Cooperative. And lastly is on the ePASADA Incubation Laboratory, since jeepney drivers are not on the more educated side of the society, so we wanted to educate them to how to adapt to the smart transportation technologies such as this one. And for the second question, sorry. Oh, okay.
What's your budget for all this?
For the budget, actually, to be honest, we have yet to create a budget plan. But with the consultations, we believe that it would always start with the consultation and working together with all the stakeholders. And that's the time we can create a plan together with the budget for the ePASADA project.
But you see this as something that is mainly going to be financed by the government?
We
down
want
the road?
to work...
You said down the road once you finish, but who's going to do the startup and the sort of proof of concept phase?
Actually, for the initial part, we believe that it would be an active collaboration between the government as well as the private sector in terms of developing the app. It would be a collaboration in those. But in an ideal world, in our main goal, we want to really work with the government. We want to institutionalize this ePASADA, because it's not just an app, it's actually our way, a bridge to assist the jeepney drivers. And I recognize that there were a lot of ideas in the mobile app, but it also highlights that there are a lot of opportunities to help and assist the jeepney drivers in conquering and overcoming poverty.
Yeah. One last question from the passenger perspective.
Sure.
I believe that the users of jeepneys, they depend on the jeepneys, as I understand it, and they are not going to be easily replaceable. Is that a fact?
Yeah.
Yes.
Just elaborate on that, because I know that in all these countries, all these modern buses are coming on, but we still rely on some of these traditional. What is the case in the Philippines?
Okay. In the Philippines, actually, maybe you're not yet familiar, but there's also an ongoing transport crisis, wherein a lot of Filipinos really find it hard to travel from work from their home to work due to limited transport options. And actually, for right now, the global economic crisis, wherein the gases, the price of gas is really increasing. All of the goods are increasing. And the only way for the Filipinos to go to their place of work is through the jeepneys. So it's actually both the jeepneys and the passengers. We are helping both of them to strengthen the public transportation of the Philippines and move towards the sustainability and inclusivity that we want to go to.
It's also one of the cheapest form of mass transportation in the Philippines, which is the top priority for Filipinos.
Yes, given the limited income. Thank you so much for your questions. Thank you so much for listening to our presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Can you all hear me clearly? Okay, gotcha. Okay. Yeah, right. I'm not tall enough, unfortunately. Okay. Right. Good afternoon, everyone, dear jurors, and of course my teammates. I am Hannah. This is Rifki, and this is Hilya, and we are from the Sahaja Project. Without further ado, allow me to start our project presentation. Meet Ibu Rusmi. Ibu Rusmi is an intergenerational waste picker from Ambon City, and she has spent at least 30 years of her life collecting waste from district to district in very random and unpredictable routes. A day in Ibu Rusmi's life would look like spending 12 hours of her day looking through trash to trash in neighborhoods to neighborhoods, only to earn a measly 0.5 cents on her good days. On her bad days, Ibu Rusmi may not even earn 1 cent. People like Ibu Rusmi are very vulnerable to challenges and shocks economically and also healthily. And people like Ibu Rusmi are very, very vulnerable. This can lead to physical and mental well-being that is very poor for people like Ibu Rusmi. And in Ambon City, and even in Indonesia, there are at least 1 million people like Ibu Rusmi. And because they are so disconnected from social projects, from governments, also social security programs, this creates a really vicious cycle for people like Ibu Rusmi to be in the extreme poverty subgroup. But what if we make something so vicious virtuous? Sahaja Project specifically addresses this issue. These are the urgent challenges that our project addresses. The first is Sahaja Project directly targets the extremely poor and disadvantaged communities, specifically waste pickers like Ibu Rusmi. And second is the inefficient waste management system. As though we can see, in Indonesia itself, waste management and waste segregation awareness is very low, and Ambon City alone produces 220 tons of waste per day. And if not managed and segregated well, it can create great negative impacts for a city like Ambon and ultimately for its people. And third is the lack of access to information and knowledge. People like Ibu Rusmi have very low access to quality education, as most of them even barely finishes primary school, as though there's a very urgent need to provide quality education for people like Ibu Rusmi. The next slide will be presented by Rifki.
Thank you, Hannah. So continuing Hannah's point on inefficient waste management system, we show you the waste management system of Ambon City. So as you can see, there are 3 lines. There are ideal waste management flow. There are also existing waste flow, and there are informal recycling. So the green lines, it is depicted the ideal waste management flow. So basically, the ideal waste management flow should include proper waste segregations, proper waste recycling, proper waste collections, proper waste transportations, and also proper waste transportations. However, in Ambon City, as depicted by red line, you can see that waste generations directly goes to waste collections, which means that most people in Ambon City did not segregate their waste properly. And it's a huge problem because when you did not segregate waste, the organic and inorganic waste could be mixed, which could reduce the value of the waste. So it will reduce the price for the waste pickers, and it will, of course, like impact their incomes. And moreover, as you can see in the orange line, Ambon City is highly dependent on informal waste pickers. However, informal waste picker workflow is really inefficient and really unorganized. For example, many of the waste pickers are going randomly on the street to find waste, going randomly to the house, to the firms to find waste. However, they could not guarantee each waste they could get every day. So it's really vulnerable and it's really, uncertain. And then after that, so emphasizing my previous points, the main problem is about low quality of waste segregations, and the second one is inefficient informal waste collections. So we propose you two main ideas. The first one is about sustainable solid waste business models. So basically, we sell the valuable solid waste such as plastic, aluminum, can, paper, and many other valuable solid waste. On average, it could be sold for like 0.5 kilogram if it's ideal. It's not mixed with the organic waste. So, and on the other hand, we could also charge for collection fee. So basically, we could organize waste picker to get fixed users, which is household and also firms. We could charge collection fee by $6 per month per household and also $30 per month per firm. So we did that by organizing the workflow of the waste pickers, and also we will help to educate the societies because it's important. We hope to further change the behavior of waste segregation in Ambon City. So we will help to educate, campaigns, and raise the awareness. And our second idea is about plastic credits. Basically, it's exchanging the plastic that we recycled into a credits. So we will partnering with some plastic credits auditors like Vera, which will account credibly our plastic which we recycled. And also we will partnering with the implementers such as Systemic, which will help us in the documentation process because it will quite difficult and it will create our efficiency of the system. And by this, we will get additional revenue of $200 per one plastic credits or 1,000 kilogram of plastics. And then Hannah will continue about the education process.
Thank you, Rifki. As before mentioned about the challenge of lack of access to quality education, Sahaja also targets the education of waste pickers as our tagline for the community by the community, which we put waste pickers at the center of our education program. And we do target it to be culturally responsive as to the needs of each waste pickers in their own respective areas, as they are very unique. So the three products of our education program is first the dissemination on the funds of knowledge. So Sahaja will then train waste pickers to be able to have knowledge regarding waste segregation and waste management. And then second is hard skills, as Sahaja will then create a very sophisticated waste management system. These waste pickers might come across technology that they've never seen before. And so we feel that the implementation and training of hard skills regarding technologies that will ease their waste management process is essential. And finally, professional development. We also believe that for the long term, we want waste pickers to be able to manage their own waste management facilities and also facilities and farms, and not only become waste pickers throughout their whole life, but also have a career ladder and become self-sufficient of their own waste process management systems. Fine. And next, we have Hilya talking about the education of the community.
Thank you, Hannah and Rifki, for a great presentation. So as you can see here, this is the overview of how we're going to ensure high compliance and participation from the community. When we started thinking about how to engage the community, we were aware that community is the central part of the Sahaja Project, and we were aware about risk of building a community-centered intervention. So many interventions in Indonesia have been made stagnant because they have limited analysis on government-to-person interaction. So we agreed right away that this has to become one of the most fundamental parts of Sahaja Project, and we decided to base our analysis with theory of public participation in governance. We found that this method is not yet commonly applied in Ambon, especially in projects concerning the poorest. In this model, you can see that in interacting with households, the village-level government has to involve 3 steps in the process. First step is diversity and inclusion. D&I, achieved by community-centered discussions. One of the most important part of this step is inclusive attendance involving leaders of neighborhood associations, men and women, and a wide range of ethnicities, race, and socioeconomic status in the community, and eventually holding mandatory sessions with all the representatives to actually absorb the community's concern. The second step is expertise and participation. And the key words here would be a shared expertise. This is implemented by conducting scientific demonstration of the Sahaja model to the community, but because it is a shared expertise, the process cannot be imposing. It's not merely transferring knowledge, but more about producing and creating local knowledge and understanding together with the community itself. And the third step, which I personally think is the most important part of the whole process, is building legitimacy. Compliance is very closely affected by sense of legitimacy. So we think that the community will need to know and understand the clear implementability of the project, from fundings to methods to logistics and even to estimated rate of success, talking through Sahaja's hopes, potential failures, and all in all, our aspirations and hope for the community. We believe that in building legitimacy, we aim to provide the most transparent version of the whole project for the community to finally gain trust and sense of belonging in the plan and consequently willing to cooperate. Next slide. So one of the most pressing issues about this population is its ironic exclusion from social protection policies designed to reach them. So we aim to not only improve their skills in waste segregation, but to also educate them about their citizen rights to social protection, so that in the future, they know how to financially handle future shocks and understand where to go to access government aid in the most comprehensive way possible. This goal will be implemented by our Department of Human Capital, but also in collaboration with their dedicated social workers from the Ministry of Social Affairs. This very disconnection between the social workers and the waste pickers are common among them because they have this high mobility from picking waste through a random route for 12 hours every day. And there is no existing policy yet that addresses this exact problem of mobility. We found one of our informants in Jakarta that have been constantly absent from the educational class provided by MOSA that's been held once every 2 weeks, 4 years. So we're very committed to help address this issue in a way that's modest but powerfully relevant. Next slide.
Thank you, Hilya. So I will talk about the Sahaja's financing process. So to clarify, basically there will be 2 organizations that involved in the Sahaja projects. The first is Sahaja itself, which wants to empower the waste pickers, helping educating the societies to properly segregate their waste as well as raising the awareness. And the second one will be the Sahaja waste pickers, which will run the business. So talking about the business sides, we believe that we will get break-even points in the year 4, and after that there will be self-sufficiency if we are able to complete our models. So basically, if we could reach 2,000 tons of inorganic waste by year 5, we could reach the break-even point in year 4. And then for this to happen, we will need initial cost of $7,000 for the business and also the operating expense of $200,000 until there is break-even point. It will be used for equipment, fuel, electricity, and others. And then regarding the Sahaja itself, our budget is like 1 million for 3 years. It will include the personnel, administration, consultant, equipment, direct costs, and others. So we believe this is valuable because we could create not just jobs, but green jobs. Because it's related to the environment, we could create 90 waste pickers, 12 drivers, 14 officers, 5 managers by year 5. We also enabling circular economy as well as environmentally sustainable business, which could reduce the gas emissions produced by the waste leaking to the oceans, and also preventing from waste landslides, which could cost millions of lives.
So we're proud about Sahaja because it is speaking directly to the very core issue they have to deal with every day. We believe that to create interventions that actually work, an empathic method is key to the design process. So we had visualized their daily life in chronological order before anything else, and we started from there. Sahaja is not a high-level intervention. It is spot on. It is close to Burismi's life. it is responsive to the very core issue, the very core needs of the waste pickers. Giving them education without exposing them to the idea of a better cash flow, it won't change anything for them. It won't change and create behavior changes. They don't have the luxury to enjoy education for what it truly is, to learn for the sake of learning. They don't even have the capacity to think beyond that very day they live in. They just want to survive each day. And Sahaja is not interfering with any governance process that currently takes place, making it completely free from issues of political will that often prevents good interventions from unlocking its fullest potential. All in all, we present you Sahaja. It is a systemic and intersectional, but modest and non-radical intervention with high visibility and direct impact.
Would you go back to your slide with, where you have the budget and this one, yeah. So I'm looking at the cost category, and could you go in a little bit more detail? And it's a huge proportion that goes to salaries. Give us a little detail on this.
Yeah, so we will include many personals because we are quite big in terms of our interventions. It includes like the educations of the waste pickers, which we need to engage with the community. It's one, and we need also someone who could educate the waste pickers. I mean, like understand the operations of waste picking. I mean, because segregation is a huge process. For example, like even in Indonesia, we need to spare it into 80 waste types. But the society only segregates like 3, like organic and residue. It requires a high skill competency. And then also the technology, also the business sides, also the managers, like the director of the Sahaja, as well as the operatings, the public relations, and also the finance. Who could organize the finance, because fundraising itself requires a process. It's on the personal sides. I mean, for the indirect administrations, consultant, and equipment, it's quite low. I mean, like equipment, we just need like office stationery. We also need like the office and any other thing. So that will be the cost included.
I have another question. I'm looking at, you're going to create green jobs for 90 waste pickers over these 3 years and 12 drivers, etc. There's quite a gap between 90 waste pickers plus attendant to the 1 million people you were mentioning are actually waste pickers. So give us a little idea of how this is going to be scaled up and what kind of incremental speed you're going to be working at, if possible.
So in this case, our financial projection only assumes for one business size, but we could scale up, of course. I mean, like if we scale up, there will be efficiency in terms of finance we use. I mean, because we could use the same persons. I mean, for this model, we just simulate on one waste business. So, I mean, like, for one waste business, we could reach the break-even point in year 4, but we could scale up as well. I mean, like, to increase the green jobs. And the market potential is really high because, for example, like, we only target for 2,000 tons per year. However, like Ambon City, it's produced 88 tons of organic waste per day. So there will be many potential for scale up. So we will also look for that, but this model only project that.
And how confident are you that at least a big part of this is going to be financed by the government of one kind or the other?
No, I mean, like, we are trying to tap into many funders that we could, as long as they align with our values about environment, about the just transitions to green jobs. So it's not about government. I mean, like, we collaborate with government because in Ambon City, the one who is responsible for waste management is the government of Ambon City. Of course, we will collaborate with them, but we try to get fund as much as we can, as long as the value align with us.
Thank you. And building on the finance, one very interesting idea I read in your project was about carbon offsetting finance, and you were interested in tapping into that. Could you elaborate? How do you plan to do so?
Yeah, sure. So basically, the plastic credits is coming from carbon credits. So basically, for the plastic credits, it accounts for how many plastic you recycled or are you able to reduce and converting it to the credits. And it is done by, there's some institutions which are credible enough to account for that. It is FERA, one for examples that we are trying to collaborate with them. So for this case, we will try to collaborate with FERA to get us the credits. And after that, the credits we will sell to many actors, perhaps like the government or also like mostly the private sectors. And we will also need, as I mentioned previously, what I name as implementers. I mean, like, because carbon credits a huge process. I mean, for example, like selling the credits and connecting it to the private sector requires the implementer. We will also need to collaborate with them and I mean, have a share with Sahaja and have a share with the systemic as well. So we will need them for the projects. And for the share itself, I already calculated, so it will be like 60% for Sahaja and 40% for systemic for my assumptions, but we could go as low as 30% for Sahaja and 70% for systemic, but it depends on the negotiation. So that's the process.
Thank you. On a different subject, and a second question I had is related to the education. I thought that was quite interesting that you were trying to build in also that component of the project, and you said that you would try to overcome failures of previous education programs that couldn't reach the population because of their mobility. How will you do that?
Thank you for the question. So for that specific question, we're thinking that the waste pickers will be working in our project segregation center, and we will also collaborate with the government to use their existing waste temporary shelter as our project segregation center. So because they have to quote unquote attend or go to the office every day, so that's why we are able to prevent their high mobility. And as for the social workers, I think it is very helpful for them, for us to connect them, because we can report to them. These are the waste pickers that work with us, and this is the villages, this is the district they live in, and this is the persons that have been missing from the educational class. So you can come to this project segregation center, and then we hold classes together with them. Because normally, the social workers have all the guidance, very rigid, very detailed from the Ministry of Social Affairs. It's just they're unable to reach these persons.
In addition to that, we also want to focus on making this as culturally responsive as possible, meaning that we want knowledge that is actually useful. We want to speak in the same language that they do speak, and not tell them and dictate to them what they should be learning, but what they want and what they need. And I feel like that was one of the biggest reasons of these failures, because it was always a top-down approach in terms of the government intervention. Sahaja itself, we aim to be a grassroots organization, so waste pickers are definitely at the center. And and in the long term, if I may, we aim for Sahaja to not eternally intervene, but hopefully they can self-sustain themselves and Sahaja can move on to a different population, which goes back to your question on the 1 million target that we were saying, because they're all spread out across Indonesia that have like at least 300 different provinces and even 1,000 of different ethnicities. I believe making a very standard and rigid approach would not be a right approach.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, thank you very much. I think that waste treatment is something which is extremely important, both from the environmental perspective and also in terms of the income of those that are doing the job. I like the way you started with this lady who was there working for getting 0 to 0.2. What I would have liked to see, and that's the question I'm asking, just to be clear, how your project is going to change the situation of that woman in terms of, one, the work that she's doing, and secondly, her income. What is going to make a difference to her? What is she going to be doing differently, and how would that affect her increasing her income?
Sure. Basically, with price, I mean, like, informal waste pickers right now is informal and unorganized. So basically, we try to organize them into one organization named Sahaja Waste Pickers or any other name that they will choose. So using this approach, we could get incomes from 3 sources, as I mentioned previously. So basically, it comes from selling the valuable solid waste. It's also coming from collection fee that we charge from collecting from the household and the firms, and we also get additional income from plastic credits. So with my models, with using the models that I mentioned in financings, we could raise their income to like it's 5 million rupiah. I'm not sure about the US dollars, but it's like 3 or 5 times their current income right now. So there will be a huge gap of income that will we create. So that will be the answer. Yeah.
And if I may add,
that increase should be through what? What would she be doing differently?
What?
Or additionally?
Okay, so I think that's a pretty good technical explanation, but actually I personally think the highlight of this very project is that we're addressing the very exact problem of mobility. So so our population is already segmented, but in this segment, there are many circles. We have those waste pickers who are smart enough or have been in the business long enough to know the exact routes they have to go through. And they're mostly, their educational attainment is mostly high school or junior high. But for those who didn't even graduate from elementary, that's the problem we're trying to address. They're very, very clueless about the routes they have to pick. That's why, that's where we are trying to intervene. We say something like, hey, this is the route. You don't have to go to random routes. You have to attend to your office, which is the existing temporary shelter. And here you can just segregate the waste. You don't have to walk for 12 hours every day to collect waste and then just earn 0.5 cents. You just have to sit here, and we're going to learn together how to segregate the waste. And we're trying to connect you to plastic credit system.
Just on the segregation, understanding question, because I understood from the proposal that there's segregation happening in these segregation centers or office that you want to set up, but I also read somewhere that you want to have the waste producers, the households, to segregate more, if I'm correct. And if that's the case, I would like to know a bit more how this is supposed to work. What are the incentives for the households? Or you want to convince the government to implement a policy? Or is it just by awareness raising, which is probably not going to work from my point of view? So how is this segregation at the household level going to work, and how does it combine with the segregation in the segregation centers?
Yeah. Yeah, sure. I will add the technical aspect of segregation. So basically the household and the firms will be segregated into 3 categories, which is only organic, inorganic, and residuals. So organic is basically food and something, inorganic basically the valuable one, the can, and the residual is something that you could not recycle, like medicines and something else. And what the waste pickers will do on segregation is segregating it into more detailed pieces, because I mean like bottles itself, like the plastic is PET and the like the cap inside it is different material, so they will much more detail segregating into that. That's why we need the educations for them to like separate them into more detailed segregations, and that's why we need the household and the firms to segregate their waste properly.
Mm-hmm. And as for the second question, why we're confident that the government bodies we're trying to approach will cooperate with us is because we found that the currently pursued methods to solve waste management system in Ambon City, they're either too top-down or too horizontal, meaning that both the government and the community completely have two differing solutions to solve one exact problem with very trivial impact, and those two approaches are 100% disconnected. So our project focuses on the community empowerment at the beginning, but to make it not too horizontal of an approach, we designed a system based on theory of public participation in governance so that everything will be integrated. And so as you can see, Sahaja is a project that exactly fits into the problem. We think by implementing this business model, we're not interfering with the current governance process, but we invent and propose a profitable business model for the very solution they've been trying to find. And it would almost feel like we're helping them simplify their job of trying to find more personnels to work on this very problem. They don't have the government-to-person interaction schemes to help address this issue. And we help design a business model to help foster their grand high-level regulations to actually work. So that's where we're trying to address the issue.
And to answer your question regarding how households are integrated into the education of waste segregation, we acknowledge that this is a very systemic problem, meaning that it's not only a problem that is caused by the waste pickers, but also because of how the low awareness of communities and also households from segregating their waste. And by doing this, incentive-wise, I think, we do rely a lot on, as Hilya mentioned in her presentation, the theory of participation approach, meaning we want the communities to be engaged. And in the context of education, although we have Sahaja in our vision has their own household experts, but because we aim to be culturally responsive, we are also really open to any community members who are also expertise in waste segregation and come and be involved in the education of waste pickers as well as managements. And also
And answering about the incentives, so basically first we will targeting households that are highly wants to be sustainable. There are a lot of potential households as well as firms because they perhaps need like green certificates, something like that. And then it will be the incentive, and we will in the office the waste pickers not only will segregate but also will note the waste. It could be reported to the household, so they will get transparency in terms of how many waste that we segregate and how many waste that we avoid to go to the landfill. And then other incentives is like perhaps we could do like some marketing theory, like giving incentive for the household to apply for us with some promo or some other benefits to give waste. Perhaps for free for the first, and then many theory of marketing we can do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So, what do you do every day? Today, we are all here in this beautiful place with people from all around the world, and that's amazing. Earlier today, we did a lot of normal activities, like taking a shower, washing the dishes, washing our hands, and drinking water, for example. These activities are so ordinary that you hardly ever think how they work, and you cannot imagine our life without them. We take them for granted, but that's not everybody's reality. Only 54% of the world's population has access to safe and adequate sanitation services. This means that almost half of the world don't have access to safe water and wastewater disposal. Almost half of the world cannot do the simple activities we did earlier today, yesterday, and every single day. Can you imagine your life without washing your hands? Or worrying about having or not clean water? The lack of sanitation services is related to a lot of different kinds of disease, loss of school days, and loss of work productivity. And all those factors perpetuate poverty. Chronic poverty. Poverty is a multidimensional concept that includes a lot of different aspects. And people who live in chronic poverty usually don't have access to safe sanitation services. So, if we want to eradicate poverty, we need to improve, we need to provide the services for everybody. And we cannot accept these numbers. But where are these people that live without sanitation services? Not only in Brazil, but in most of Latin America countries, the urbanization process was accelerated, disorganized, and unplanned. And this implies in huge social differences and lead to informal settlements. The people who live in these places are usually low-income population and marginalized social groups. And these people are more exposed to violence and disease. These places have low infrastructure and precarious sanitation services. In Brazil, we call them favelas. Or in English, we can use the word slums. In Brazil, 84% of the population lives in urban areas. And in São Paulo, the biggest Brazilian city, there are more than 1,700 favelas and more than 360,000 people that live without wastewater collection and treatment. That's a lot of people. And this scenario happens not only in Brazil, but in most of Latin America countries and other countries around the world. And this is a huge challenge we need to urgently deal with.
Okay, so now that we know how many people live without sanitation, who they are, and where they live, we have to highlight why it's so important to provide them with sanitation. What are the consequences of having no sanitation? Well, there will be negative environmental impacts, as well as negative effects on well-being and life quality. There will be an increase in the number of cases of waterborne diseases, and also a contribution to other diseases, for example, by attracting mosquitoes and rodents to the area. And this leads to a scenario in which people will be missing days of work, so less income. Children will be missing days of school. This is going to put pressure on the health services, and the person who is sick will need medication, which most of the time costs money that they don't have. And actually, it affects other family members as well, apart from the one that is sick. For example, if a child is sick at home, usually it's going to be the mother who's not going to work to stay home and take care. And the reality is as bad as it looks, and doing nothing has a very high cost. In Brazil, only in 2019, there were around 200 million days of absence from work and school due to waterborne diseases. And from that, over 273,000 hospital admissions. On average, having no sanitation led to wages 4.9% lower when compared with people with the same education level and work experience. Also, negative impacts of around 22% on work performance, lower educational level and grades, so negative effects on reaching superior education and work qualification, and also real estate depreciation. So it's very clear how it all contributes to a vicious cycle of chronic poverty. We've been talking a lot about sanitation and wastewater, so let's disclose these terms. Sanitation is the service of collecting and treating wastewater, which is the water that supplies the community after its various uses and applications. And in fact, wastewater is a very proper name for it, because it implies that something is being wasted, and it's not only water. We are wasting the opportunity to change this very problematic scenario. What a waste, right? What a wastewater. So that's where our project name comes from. What a wastewater is not only about providing people with sanitation. It is about using sanitation as a tool to bring together knowledge building and sharing, social organization, community empowerment, reduction of gender and racial inequality, infrastructure cost reduction, job creation, and environmental education. You must be wondering how is it possible, and we will show you.
Now that we know the realities of favela, it's evident that sanitation services are an efficient way to reduce poverty and inequality, not only in Brazil, but around the world. We believe that decentralized systems are a powerful solution because they provide adequate sanitation and permit the involvement of the community. So our proposal is a compact system that provides adequate wastewater treatment, simple implementation, and low-cost operation. But for the system to work well, we need adequate operation, and periodic maintenance must be performed. So one of the goals of this project is to involve the community in the entire process, from planning to maintenance. And it must be possible because we choose a simple system, and we can train in the community with basic technical solution to operate the system. We choose for this project a favela of São Paulo City. However, this technology can be applied in each community, in another community around the world. For implementation of the system, we summarize the main items needed. But if one or more items are missing, this project continue be doable because we just have to do minor adaptation for this new reality for other communities. And this project will design it with natural-based solution principles. So with everything that we show you since the beginning, it's evident that this is more than a technology for sanitation, but is a tool for social organization, environmental education, and reduce gender and racial disparities. And now we can show you how this transformation is possible. This part, our friend, it's not here, so she sent a video for us.
Now that we understand the structure of our system, how do we engage the community? First, they will receive environmental and education classes so they become aware of the importance of the sanitation. The community will receive training for operation and maintenance, and they will be divided into groups with specific responsibilities so they can self-manage the system. Despite the simplicity of the system, it will be necessary to raise funds for the implementation. The funding can be governmental, private, or even international. And we can say that the funding will be an investment not only in the environment, but also in the people who live in favelas. For the implementation, the community will decide the best places to install it and will participate in the construction of the system. In this way, we hope to build up in this community the feeling of belonging to the place where they live. The benefits we will achieve are job creation by paying salaries to community technicians, empowering them with new knowledge and the opportunity to play a role in the community. Enhancement in health, since there will be no more wastewater running through the streets. Strengthening the community by making them work as a group and encourage them to take part in the decision-making of the process. Reducing inequality, since the groups will be women and no-Caucasian people to give a chance to those whose society sorely could deny the opportunities. For better quality of life, we believe that our project can be used as a social management instrument, and together with education, we can lead to changes in habits, practices, and attitudes, resulting in a collective construction to a better life. So we can say that our project is from the community and for the community. We can see that our project directly reaches the targets of no poverty, gender equality, clear water and sanitation, decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation and infrastructure, reduced inequality, sustainable cities and communities, life below water, life on land, and partnership for the goals. So we can see that the system proposed will change lives through contemplating 13 of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, indicating the success of the project in changing lives through improvement a minimal and safe sanitation. So we can say, what impact?
That's it.
That's it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. It's very interesting and very useful. I'd like to have a question on the how. How will you start? What is your initial what are the initial beneficiaries of what you are wanting to do? Doing that with a little bit of details.
So this project came along together with the Geneva Challenge. So we didn't have the chance to program a real implementation. But anyway, during our development and when sorry, I forgot the word. But when sharing with our friends our idea and our participation within the Geneva Challenge, we were approached by some people, friends of ours, that are volunteer in some communities, some favelas. And they were approaching us saying, oh yes, I saw your project, I really love it, I think it would be a perfect fit for the community I volunteer. Would you be interested into trying, implementing? And of course we are, but we didn't have the time to really implement since we were really focused on preparing the presentation for today. But yes, that's how we intend to start.
It's our next step to choose the community, right?
So we were approached by some people that already work in communities that are organized in communities, how did you call it? Communities associations. Yes.
And women, in a special women community association.
Exactly. And then, so we have a few opportunities, but we didn't have the time to explore them yet.
Thank you for your presentation and for the idea. I think it's good that engineers should be using their knowledge to solve some of our pressing problems. And I liked it because only less than a year ago, a few months ago, the Human Rights Council actually made access to a clean environment as a human right. So I think this is another aspect that this would be addressing. And also I see that, yes, those of us who know about waste using septic tanks know what happens. And I think this, for me, is a very good solution that addresses this. The only question I'd like to ask you is, what is going to be the government's role in this? I know the question went to you before, because I know that, I have my septic tank, I can do this, but then how would we involve the government? Because then only people who can afford to do this would do it. But we know that this is going to benefit. And also we know that sanitation is the neglected sector. Basically, because even in the SDGs, they put sanitation with water. So usually people concentrate on water, not sanitation. That's why I particularly like this project, that we're looking at that aspect, that neglected aspect of that SDG. So, but we need to get the government involved because this is so important, as you have shown, the importance to health and everything else. So how do you think the government, we could interest the government to make this really something that is important, and also to provide whatever assistance individual households would require to put the system in place?
Yeah, so it's really another challenge, but we consider the government to be a partner with our project. In fact, Brazil has a law and we have a national plan for sanitation. And we are expecting by 2033 to have 100% of the population covered with sanitation. We are very far from that. We have around 50% today covered with sanitation. But we have this plan, it's a national plan, so it's a commitment from the government to provide sanitation to people. And more important than that, in this national sanitation plan, it's already predicted to be considering decentralized system to provide population in very specific areas, or actually the areas in which the centralized system cannot afford or technically offer sanitation to these people. And for example, in São Paulo, the city of São Paulo, we also have a city sanitation plan, and the same applies. So they are committed to provide sanitation. They also consider decentralized technologies as part of the solution. So we are in line with the plans of our government. And we hope that presenting them a clear solution, they would partner with us potentially with financial support, but also with providing data, and also presenting the areas of interest in which would be preferably to apply our system. So we expect to work in synergy with the government.
Yes. And just an insight, because I think Brazil government was one of the government was one of the governments in the Human Rights Council that was keen on having this human right to a clean environment. So you could use that wherever that becomes important to use. Thank you.
And we've been working for a long time with waste wastewater. So we are used to the fact that your point, people usually forget the wastewater in the sanitation, focus on water and forget the other parts that are so important as water.
Actually, I was visiting a similar project site 2 weeks ago in Berlin. It was interesting with this wetland wastewater system. And I don't know much about it. I'm not an engineer, so but I have some first-hand exposure. And what was interesting is that they stopped or they abandoned the project after a couple of years because the neighbors complained about the smell. I mean, I think probably in a favela in Sao Paulo, people are probably less sensitive to the smell than in the neighborhood in Berlin. But still, throwing the question out there, if this is an issue, if people might be not interested in this because of this smell or other hygienic concerns that they have as neighbors. So I would like to ask you that question still.
Besides, we're talking the spice we're talking about favelas. We are proposing the system that really works, and the smell is an indicator that the system is not working. So if a system is well operated and have the necessary, the periodic maintenance, it won't smell. And people in favelas deserve like the same system and the same efficiency as people living in other places and luxury places.
And actually, I don't know if in Benin they predict something before the wetlands or if it's just the wetland. In our project, we included a septic tank. So it's, let's call a pre-treatment for the wetland, and it helps keeping, let's say, a balanced environment in the wetland, and it helps preventing other.
So you're using both anaerobic and aerobic.
Exactly.
Yes.
And I think one important thing of wetlands, it's become the environment more comfortable with plants. It's again helping with the English.
The wastewater is running through the streets, so it's a bigger problem even than the wetland.
Yeah,
it's
a scenic value. Scenic value.
That's it. Thank you.
What's your budget for all this, and the initial budgets and the costs, and your scale-up time, all these things?
Okay, so the system has two major costs: the system construction and the system operation. And this is our first budget, it's initial budget, so it will be, we need to improve with time and more advance in the project, but that's our initial idea.
Yeah, actually, the system of septic tanks and wetlands, they are very flexible. And it's a positive aspect of them because they can adapt on each community and the area available and the number of people that will be attended with the system. But also it has a negative aspect that it's very difficult for us to make a general budget. So it's really more specific for each application. So we did this general price estimation, but yeah, for being sure, we would have to have a fixed place in which we'd be able to apply, and then we would be able to calculate the cost with more precision.
This is the cost for sorry, I forgot the microphone. This is the cost for about 1 year of operation plus implementation, and this system this one, it's about attending about 30 people. So it's one module. We calculate this way, but it's also flexible.
Yes, and economies of scale, they apply for this kind of sanitation treatment. So if in one community we put one module, we have a price for installing the system and one price for operating it. If we multiply the number of modules, we can have the same operational team working. So we have economy of scale applying. And of course, for the construction materials also, the more you buy, the better price you can get.
Yeah. I have a question. In terms of setting up the system in a community, is it per household, or can you have a number of households fitting into one system?
Yes.
Both are possible. But our project, we intend to be a community treatment. So, for example,
we calculated this, let's say, general module for 30 people. But as I said, it's very flexible. So if we have 50, we could adapt to 50. If we have 15, we could adapt to 15.
In rural areas, the system, the septic tanks are usually used by one family only. But in urban areas, we can adapt to attend like a whole community.
Yeah, okay.
So who's going to fund this?
She sent us the questions.
Yeah, so as we said, we were developing this project together with the Geneva Challenge, so we didn't really have the time to seek for sponsors, but we have some in mind. There are possibilities with the government, as we said. So we have funds predicted for sanitation resources and also for favelas infrastructure, and also health funds. International funds are also considered by us, and we put as an example the commerce chamber between Germany and Brazil. So they have already financed some environmental projects, so we see as a potential possibility. And some well-known international funds like the World Bank has funds for environmental projects, also for women entrepreneurship, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and JP Morgan. We also have JP Morgan Brazil. And we also prospect some national private funds. So the companies Fundação Grupo Boticário, Petrobras, and Instituto Votorantim are big companies in Brazil, and they usually help financing sustainability projects. So also a possibility. And in Brazil, we have a law in which companies that somehow damage the environment, they have to sign up an agreement for compensation. And we see this as well as a possibility. So companies that need to compensate environmental impact could finance our project and pay for this compensation.
Yeah.
And earlier today, we had a founding workshop, so now we have new ideas to prove our initial idea.
Yeah, and also we approached the Instituto 17, or Instituto 17 in Portuguese, and they are a Brazilian NGO that works for enabling the dissemination of the SDGs. And in 2022, they achieved over 1,200 of funds for some of the SDGs. We already approached them, and not sure if the funding is going to be possible, but at least they would give us some orientation on how to get the funding.
Yeah. But is it possible also to get some money, however small, from the users? Because currently, with the septic tanks, they are paying for the emptying of the septic tanks themselves. So maybe some of that money could go into also keeping the system going.
Yes, it can be a possibility, but we would put it as really below the list. Our idea is to empower and provide more to the community instead of kind of taking. It's not exactly taking, but we would like them to gain with the system and not to finance the whole system.
But eventually they're going to have to take it over.
Oh yes, but with our... Yeah. Also, together with the partnership with the government, if everything goes in line, the government could be the responsible for paying the salaries and maintaining the system.
The operational costs of the system could be the government participation, because it's a government function to provide sanitation services for urban areas in Brazil. So this is already a fail for the government.
Yes, and our project is based especially on empowering the community. So with the environmental education and making them take part in the process, feeling included totally and feeling attended, we hope that they will audit the system themselves, and we would be just like an external support if they would need. We won't expect to be tutors of the project. We expect to really provide the tools for the community to be able to take the project along. And we also see that gaining experience with our system, these people would be able to seek for jobs outside of the community. As I said, Brazil has this commitment that in 11 years, we are going to double the amount of population that is attended. And of course, we don't have right now enough technical support or technical professionals for that. So if the community technicians are well trained, they would be able to prospect for jobs outside, and then there will be a spot open for the community system, and this would be the sustainability.
And when we choose to work with gender equality, women usually to live in this community for a long time. So we believe that this process will be sustainable by itself because we can involve the community and probably they will be living there for a long time. That's the scenario of Brazil.
And they want to improve the place they live, like everybody wants to live in a nice place.
So this is a great idea that you need to work on. What's your next step?
Our next step is applying. So starting from a very small scale, maybe one small community, just one module, and checking how hard it's going to be to find the fundraising.
And the step behind fundraising and studying a little more about some technical aspects in our project to apply, right?
Yeah, and we already thought about what would be necessary for the community to be educated for that. So on the environmental classes, let's call it this way, we would be telling people about what is environment, what's the importance of a clean environment, how a clean environment affects their life, and what they can do to contribute to a clean environment. And from the technical aspects, we would be providing really only the necessary information for making the system run, so it's not too much for them to learn. They learn the essential. So,
and they will want to learn more.
Yeah, we believe in that.
Yes.
After the system starts to work, probably they want to believe more. The women of the community probably will be involved and looking for more information by themselves.
Yeah, but I would
and
say...
we would be there for this.
Yeah, I would say that the next step is really trying. And with this experience, I believe we would be able to scale up.
We still have Gabriela on the screen. Does she want to say something?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, I wish I'm here with you guys, but today was not possible. I just want to say that I like the girls. I really believe in our project, and we are thinking a lot about the next steps. We have a lot of ideas and hopes for this project, and I think next year will be our year with this project.
Great.
Great ending, I'm all for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.